First off, I'd like to say welcome back to anybody that has been following this build series. I know it's been a really long time since I've put anything out on the 47 Ford. Don't worry, I haven't stopped working on it. I've been pouring a ton of after hours time into this thing. I've been focusing really heavily on the cab and getting that thing put back together. Well, from the last episode where we did the sound deadener on the inside of the cab, I moved to the outside of the cab. The firewall was still raw metal and I needed to get it coated so that I could start running wires out into the engine bay. To start, I gave it a good scuff, a cleaning, and then coated it with some Por 15. After the Por 15 had cured, I went ahead and scuffed that also and removed the gloss. I've covered in prior episodes adding the microspheres into the Raptor liner. And what microspheres are is they're tiny hollow bubbles, microscopic hollow bubbles. And they provide heat insulation as well as noise deadening. So when you mix these in, it gives you a natural heat barrier as well as some sound insulation from the engine bay. So having noise and heat both coming from the engine bay, this was the perfect place to use it. I applied several coats and let it cure, and then it was time to roll the truck back in the shop, unmask it, and get to work with the wiring. I've got my headlight dimmer here, floor dimmer, and this is the plug. Plug's right on there. Unfortunately, it's got to drop through the grommet here, which is right there, and then it's got to go through here, and you can catch the bottom of the dimmer there. So I'm gonna have to add about a foot onto that wire, and luckily I have an off cut from when I did my headlight switch, which is nice because it's labeled and it's the correct gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these. Now I do have the new spade connectors, and I also have these keys here that release these out of the plug, which is kind of nice. That's when you're trying to use all the factory plugs and stuff, that's almost a necessity. The other thing that makes a big difference is if you only do one of these at a time, and you don't have to worry about mixing them up. You know, instead of releasing all three wires and then extending all three wires and then having to reference where they go, just release one at a time. Takes a little longer, but prevents some headache in the end. So the other day when I was trying to get my hinges, my hood hinges installed, I ended up breaking one of the studs. So I went on eBay and I found some stainless steel remans by Ventique. I went ahead and got them. I only got this part though because I wanted to kind of do a cylinder, a gas cylinder instead of a spring on the other part. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these installed with a little bit of butyl tape, make them waterproof, and that way I can start buttoning up the inside of the cab. As far as, you know, like the vintage air and some other stuff, it can go in permanently. As you might know, I put a Blazer OEM fuel tank, a new fuel tank, OEM to a Blazer, in the back of my truck there. This is the fuel sending unit, OEM fuel sending unit for that specific tank without a fuel pump. I bought it without the GM fuel pump because I wanted to go with the upgraded fuel pump. So this is the Aeromotive. And I got the version that would fit right on here. So let's go ahead and get that on. First time I've ever done one of these. I'm not sure. I don't know, I'm guessing that's probably correct right there. Probably just to prevent rattling. So this is my vintage air climate control panel here that's going to go in the center of the dash. And if you look at the lights, the indicator lights on here, they're the old incandescent style. Let me go ahead and plug this into my battery here. And they're kind of a soft white hue, which isn't going to match the rest of my dash. There you go. And not only that, but I'm looking at how it's lit here, and I'm thinking I might be able to do some improvement upon that. These are little 5mm bulbs. I just push into a rubber grommet here on the back side, and I have these 5mm LEDs here, and those are a direct replacement. I mean, those literally just push right in the exact same grommet. Let's check and see what that looks like. These are cool white, and I think that's going to match the rest of my dash a little bit better. So that's what we're working with. Here's the thought that I had though. is I'm wondering if I can get a more consistent light across the back of here. If you pull these off, you can see what we're working with.
Let's go to Toledo, Ohio. Hey guys, I appreciate you taking our call. Let's be on the working full-time.
I'm looking at this here. This is the condensation drain out of the unit. This is the pipe that I incorporated in. I think I'm gonna cut it back down about another 3/4 of an inch. As you can see, I didn't line those up perfect. All right, I've got that shortened. I can still put a hose clamp on there. Touched up the paint, and I think that's gonna make the installation of that hose a little bit easier. Milwaukee scissors right here, they're no joke, man. They're really good. So I haven't been getting much filming of me working up underneath this dash because there's no good angle, really. But you can see the outlet vents there, and then this vent up here is going to have enough room to swing right over top of that. Should work out pretty well. And then we'll kind of go over the plan. So here's the defroster, comes out right here. The window frame angles it out across the glass there. So that's going to shoot right to the front, very front of that cowl, come in, and that's got to catch this vent here. Then these hoses, I've got the 2 heater hoses, the supply and the return, and then same on the air conditioner. Those are going to wrap to the edge over here, come down behind this kick panel, and then they shoot out these holes right here into the fender well and over to the compressor and water pump. And then this AC outlet here has to snake around and hit the hole right here. This center one just does the 2 short runs here, and then this one over here has to shoot all the way over and around to the driver's side. Should be an adventure. And then, as you guys saw me doing, I had to cut this off and re-glue it at the correct angle, because when I did the cab, you guys saw me put in the condenser or the condensation vent there, and then kind of made that all seamless. And that drains out underneath the cab, comes out somewhere down here. Oh, and then as far as that ugly hole in the center I kind of hacked that out there. That was a big change of course there, and I sort of had to adapt on the fly. This is what we're looking at now. That goes in right there. This controls the cowl vent, and then that's the vintage air control. That was a long time ago that I did the video on this, but I made this to fit the original pedal out of the Cougar, and it worked out really well because it ended up on a good spot on this Ford floor. I made the little bracket, and then I welded the studs on, and I've got these 5/16 flange nuts. These are actually a locking flange nut. Worked out perfect. And then what I did was I hole saw cut the cable out of the firewall of the Cougar. I'm sorry, the cable mount, the steel cable mount. And then I plug welded that onto the firewall here in the 47. Another late night, after hours, 10:30 or so. And I thought I'd get a few hours in on this. So where I currently stand is I had the windshield wiper installed in here, was not happy with it. United Pacific, I had to do, great little kit for the price, but it was a little noisier than I wanted, and I had to do a few modifications to make it work. It still wasn't 100% how I wanted it. So I ended up going with Ongaro Marine windshield wiper that came out at 90 degrees, so it's gear reduced, and it's 2-speed, whereas that United Pacific was single speed, and it tucks way back in here, and it allows me a lot more room for that Dakota digital dash to fit in here. So I was having some interference issues, but now that this motor is tucked back up in here at 90 degrees, I've got to make a new defroster duct. So that's currently what I'm working on right now. And as you know, I've been tinkering around a little bit with that air conditioning, trying to get everything nestled into place. And I've got these ABS sheets here, these ABS plastic sheets. And what I'm gonna do, you heat these things to about 220 degrees or so, and they become malleable. You can really manipulate them. So what I'm trying to do is make a defroster duct that's gonna fit around the wiper switch, the windshield wiper motor, as well as the back side of that dash. So I'm gonna cut myself a strip here, and we're gonna go manipulate it with the toaster oven, as well as some spot treatment with the heat gun. Let's see what we can't come up with. Now this stuff's cheap enough that I've been doing a few little prototypes. It's gonna take a little bit of experimenting, I think, until we come up with our final product. I keep this little toaster oven around for baking welding rod and little projects like this. Very handy. So it's set at 250 degrees right now. It's only going to take a few minutes. And I've also got these two little pieces of flat bar clamped up in here that equal 1 inch, which is what my defroster duct opening needs to be. I'm gonna see if we can't form it around here. Nice thing about this stuff is that you can just trim it with a utility knife, and if you don't quite like it, you can spot heat it up and manipulate it. Okay, so something kind of like that. And I think over on this side, I'm gonna have to kind of come in with an inlet, and then it's gonna have to bend around and hook back over to the condenser. So what I have here is just a 1.5 inch drain kit from like under your sink. This is also ABS. This can also be heated up and manipulated. And you know, I know it's really counterproductive to have a lot of these tight bends in there. It really hinders airflow. But, you know, in something small like that where your runs are very short, I'm hoping that I can get away with it. And this, up underneath that dash, wraps perfectly around that wiper motor and aims my ducting right back at that main condenser there. So what I'm going to end up doing is cutting this. This is going to go to the inlet most likely, and then you can get a really high quality ABS epoxy and epoxy these two parts together. So that's kind of where we're headed. I'm going to probably cut these threads off. I think cut these threads off for sure. Cut these ones because my ducting will slip perfectly over top of that, and it's made in the USA. I've got a few of my measurements, and I'm going to go ahead and do layout. I'm guessing that we're not going to get this on our first try, but at just a few dollars per sheet, we can afford to have a few experiments here, and overall we will prevail. You're going to go on time lapse. I'm going to do my layout here, and I'll see you back in a little bit. Okay, what I've done is I've sketched out and then I've marked my lines here. C, 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 cut that line. B, bend, and then it's mirrored over here. And then I'm going to cut all these out so that I can fold this, and I'm trying to leave myself some work holding tabs for once it's installed. And then I'm going to leave this area to eventually heat and bend up and around this. So let's start cutting. All right, well, that's a decent rough draft right there. Let's go fit it up and see what we're working with. Okay, let me show you where we currently stand. I went ahead and trimmed this piece off, and I got this clocked to where it needs to be, and it fits pretty well. And we're almost in plane here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and get some epoxy ready. I'm gonna epoxy this piece here to this piece, and then we're gonna make a top cap. I went ahead and referenced where that cap needs to come to, like so, and we'll build that top cap as soon as this bottom piece is dry. Oh, and I should mention one last thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make reference marks on here with a paint pen so I know where this needs to be clocked to. I'm gonna untape it, and I'm gonna clean up this inside because I don't wanna risk getting any type of whistling. All right, I'm gonna go scuff that up. Be right back. This is some ABS specific plastic weld. Make sure you get a good coat. You really want to bed that in there. Okay, we'll let that dry tonight. All right, next day, and this has dried. Let's go ahead and unwrap it and see what we're looking like. All right, so what I think I'm gonna do is kind of blend some of these sharp edges here and here, and then we'll come across the top and form another piece and epoxy that piece on. Okay, went ahead and put some tooth on here, smooth transitioned some of these and trimmed off some of the excess. Got another piece in the toaster oven right now, and we're gonna go ahead and lay it right over top of this and kind of hold it and form it in place. Same process, epoxy it in once it fits. Maybe do a little bit of spot tuning with the heat gun. All right, I think I'm gonna go trim that with the Dremel. I'll be right back. All right, so we were headed in the direction of using the stock ECU. I had a nice Ron Francis wiring kit here, and I completely pivoted at the advice of several different people on several different occasions to go with the Terminator X by Holley. Everybody kept saying you won't regret it, that engine will run right, it won't be fighting, it won't be hunting, it won't be doing anything, it'll run the way it was supposed to. So I just pulled the Ron Francis kit out, and I think now I've got to start kind of getting this thing pivoted over to that Terminator X. So let's get to it. So I also went with the Dakota Digital dash in there, and I wasn't real happy with the way that my old windshield wiper was fitting, or windshield wiper motor rather. The cool thing about this wiper motor here is I can adjust the sweep to 45, 60, 80, or 110, and then adjust for a left or right self-park, which is going to be really helpful in this situation. So I've got that motor in here, and I basically need to figure out how to adjust it to fit this application. So it's in self-park mode right now. I'm just going to put a dot on here, kind of monitor what it does. So they're saying right here, standard adjustment is 110 degrees, right self-park. So I just need to change to left self-park. And luckily they've got some instructions on there. Let's see what we got. That's pretty nicely labeled. All right, too shabby. Not too shabby. So this is just some butyl tape, and I'm just using it around this defroster duct to kind of close some of the gaps. A little more butyl tape. Just put that really thin around the shaft here. This prevents any water intrusion. And then since this has a very slight curve to it, I'm going to put a little bit of butyl tape underneath there too, even though it has a rubber gasket. And then naturally you want the seam at the bottom, and any excess that squeezes out, we'll just razor blade right off. Butyl tape, gasket, and I'm just going to go hand tight for now because I want to get this other bracket and the defroster duct all lined up. Okay, I was able to get that in. It took a little bit of finagling, but I got it. And if you look underneath here, everything fits in there real nice. There's the outlet for the defroster, or inlet rather. Wiper motor's tucked up in. The butyl tape smashed in really nicely. The only thing is, if you look right here, you can see that butyl tape intruded a little bit along with the flange on my defroster bracket into the hole where the wiper switch goes. So I'm gonna have to trim that back. Shouldn't be a problem. I think I can get it. And then the wiper switch can fit up in here. There's not a lot of space, that's for sure. You know, there's so many of those tight bends underneath that dash. So luckily I've been able to find that 1.5 inch ducting, really nice stuff. And then, boy, these drain, ABS, under sink fittings are perfect. I mean, this is two different pieces. This is 1.5 inch ABS and 1.25 inch drain, and I'm just gonna set these in here and use an ABS epoxy, glue them together. But look at that fit up. You know, I'll put a little bit of epoxy in there. Between the the ABS sheets here and the under sink fittings, ABS fittings, it's been a lifesaver for sure. Making that AC unit fit under that dash nice and tight. Alright, so this is what I was able to come up with. I had some of this leftover material from a plasma table job, and I abandoned the flat plate because it was aluminum and I wanted to get some different bends and stuff. So I came up with this skeleton design. The Terminator X sits on the top and then this VHX sits on the bottom. And I can still see all the troubleshooting LEDs from up and underneath. So I think it will work out. I'm gonna go ahead and get this mounted and then I'll give you a shot of it all done. All right, so have a look at this. It's all mounted up in here. Problem is I think it's gonna be very susceptible to vibration, being only mounted in 2 spots here. So what I wanna do is I'm gonna add a gusset across this corner, and then I'm also gonna attach this to the bottom side of the dash, just with a self-tapper or sheet metal screw. I've got a hole down here I'm gonna hit. All right, that's in there and it is sitting pretty snug. So now I think I can start working through all the harnesses and the wiring. I'm happy with that. Oh, and then I also made sure I'd be able to see the LEDs as well as the LED here, the status LED on the VHX. So okay, so I'm back on the truck tonight. As you can see, I got the steering column in, I've got the dash gauges, the knobs. I've been chipping away on wiring underneath the dash here. This windshield wiper came in and unfortunately it showed up cracked. I contacted them and they said just keep it, we'll refund you. So I'm thinking this is a perfect chance to modify this thing. It's a little bit too long, but it's all the way collapsed right now. And I think what I might be able to do is trim some out of that. It's, you know, it's damaged anyway, so I'm gonna see if I can trim it shorter, and then I want to angle this up ever so slightly and then put a little bit of a bend in here so it comes up and then goes straight over. And then I think, since this is a J-hook style, very, very common, I think I can find a windshield wiper that I can trim down to fit. So let's do this. I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the shear, cut it, see what we can come up with. I'm gonna go put that on the belt grinder and sand it so it falls out of there. All right, we've made a fair bit of progress on this cab. I'm to the point now where I've got a battery out here and I'm getting ready to hook that up. And most everything inside of here and up and underneath the dash has been hooked up. And I think what we'll do is we'll turn the key on and we're gonna go through everything and see what turns on, what works, and kind of see what progress we've made, I guess. Kind of a big moment. All right, I've got the battery hooked up, but I thought what I would do really quick is just kind of show you how I have everything in. I still have to go through, I'm gonna have to do a lot of zip tying and wire looming. But right here, we've got the Dakota Digital brain. And then up above that, and I don't know if you can see, is the Terminator X. And the Terminator X is actually gonna exit the cab, all the harnesses and everything over here on the driver's side in the stock Ford location. And this is the GPS unit up here. I went GPS Speedo. You can see that vintage air, condensation drain. All the wiring is up and underneath there. And then this kick panel, all the vintage air stuff is underneath that kick panel. Fuse box is on the driver's side over here. And a lot of this stuff that I'm not using, I think I'm gonna end up kind of tucking it back and away. We've got the parking brake handle. I still gotta get a new cable for it. Punch that through. And then all of this wire gets tucked up underneath and loomed. You can see the vintage air ducting that I was working on, all back up in there. All these outlets are all hooked up. We've got the motor right here for the cowl, the electric cowl. So everything kind of had its spot. It was tight getting everything to go, but it's in there. It's all kind of snug and nestled in there. Well, let's go ahead and go for the big key turn here. Okay, Dakota Digital is all lit up. Our lights are flashing. Good. Got our headlights here. All right. See our windshield wiper. I'm not 100% happy with that windshield wiper yet. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do there. I'm still thinking on that one. Self-park works. All right, let's check the vintage air here. Low. Defroster. Very cool, very cool. Cigarette lighter. Let's check that cowl vent. I don't light a lot of cigarettes, maybe the occasional cigar, but that's more so for cell phone. All right, and last but not least, listen to the horn. Just kidding, no horn, but you can hear the relay. All right, feeling pretty good about the progress. Still have to do some of the courtesy lights. I've got to get these installed in the pillars here. Got to get some lights wired up and underneath the dash for when the doors are open. Same thing overhead, and then I've got to get the panels in, the headliner, and then I think we'll get the doors on, and we'll take it from there. Thanks everyone. Have a good one.